this reading is special to me every semester, the magazine reading, because it highlights and puts the spotlight on writers from the community, okay, from Southern Maryland. And that's what this magazine is all about. We want to bring attention to the fact that there are many good writers, creative writers in Southern Maryland, and many very good photographers in Southern Maryland. So this is our chance to basically put it in a frame and say, see? And it's great every semester, not just because it's toward the end of the semester. And I know for some of you students, you just want to get through the next couple of weeks, finals and all, but that it's spring now, it's comfortable, and we have a wonderful reading set up for you this evening. So I want to welcome you to our final Connections reading this semester, of the academic year for that matter. Now the format is very informal, and we do have a number of people presenting this evening, 13 in total, and you're all here. So thank you very much for coming. The format, as I say, is informal. You can come up when you see your name, and you can give a little background to the poem or the story or the photograph. It's up to you. If you want to just come right up and just read it, that's fine too. Totally up to you. The only change in the program that I do want to bring to your attention is for Jeremy and Eileen. Well, I should say Eileen. You're going to read after Jeremy, okay? Okay, and Paul, you're going to have a reader. I'm moving Sean Breslin down to right before your discussion of your photograph. So that's the only change. I want to do this now before I forget. I do want to say, if you open the book and look at the inside cover, I do not do this by myself. I have a lot of help. And I just want to draw attention to the people that help put this program together every semester. It's a lot of work. I need to tell you that our mailbox is full of submissions every semester, and it's so encouraging, and it's a pleasure to go through. But I don't do all this by myself. I have a lot of other people helping out, and some of them are here this evening. So I do want to thank them. Could we give everybody that puts this together a little round of applause, because they don't always get acknowledged for it. I mean, I stand up here and I introduce the programs, but I'm not the only person involved in this, and everyone deserves a lot of credit for the help. I also wanted to thank publicly Dr. Gottfried, President of College of Southern Maryland. Thank you very much for coming and all the support that you've given us over the years. I say, without the administration, the support that we get from the administration, we couldn't do any of this, okay? So thank you very, very much for all the support that you've given us over the years. And finally, I just want to mention that there is for those of you who are interested now, there's a Maryland Writers Association is an organization, it's a statewide organization. And quite recently, a former professor at the College of Southern Maryland, Edna Troiano, has created a Charles County chapter of the Maryland Writers Association. So if any of you are interested in joining this group, which is growing practically by the day now, I can put you in touch with Edna, and I really do think it's a fantastic thing. Sure, go ahead.
I'm back here.
She's right here, yeah, and she'd be happy to take your name and contact info and give you the date and the location for our next meeting. Again, it's a way, yes, Steve.
I just wanted to mention that there's another chapter starting in Lexington Park as well.
In Lexington Park as well, right. So there's the St. Mary's chapter as well, and it's all in an effort to build a community of writers. I mean, we do this here at the college through the series and through the magazine, but this is another way for those of you who are interested to stay involved and networked and active with your writing, which means so much to you, and it does to us as well. So with that, I will shut up, stand aside, and let you all take it from here. So Judy?
Thank you all. Thanks, reiterating all the thanks that Neil so smoothly offered. Can you hear me okay? I won't take but a minute. I have a very short poem, and like most of my poems, it seems it's about language. And this one initially may seem amusing, but it's actually quite serious and in some ways quite sad. But feel free to laugh. Overheard at a coffee shop. I'm not saying I believe her, but I'm not saying I don't believe her. Do you know what I'm saying? Totally. I mean, I'm just not sure I believe her. But then, I'm not sure I don't believe her either. Does that make any sense? Absolutely.
Good evening. The poem that I am getting ready to read is entitled, "The World is a Poem." The world is a poem in motion. It can be heard within the sound of the ocean. The world is a poem that spins. It dances freely in each blow of the wind. The world is a poem that roars. It can be seen in the heart of a storm. The world is a poem filled with grace. It glows like a smile on a small child's face. The world is a poem that once young turned old. Its youth has withered away, trapped within its soul. The world is a poem that sings of our lives. It captures each and every tick and tock of time that passes us by. The world is a poem sprinkled with few laughs and with many tears. It is the journal that keeps the journeys we take and choices we make throughout our years. The world is a poem that shall never, ever cease, even when the thoughts in our minds and beats of our hearts decrease. The world is a poem for me, just as it's a poem for you. It will never forget who we are, just as it will never forget the sun, stars, or the moon. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eileen Doherty, and I'm going to read Ave Night. Night's a good time to work. Quiet. Around 1, I stop, check the dogs, the locks, the lights. My bedside lamp rouses the mockingbird that waits in a maple across the street. 10 nights I've heard him, subdued but steadfast, calling the female he nests with every year. 9 nights I've slept while he kept vigil for her alone. By habit, he recites his life list like a prayer. This dawn they greet each other, whistling, whew, whew. This dawn I sing along. Thank you.
My name's Sherby, and the poem I wrote is called She Holds. I walk the halls of the structure to which he holds the deed, wood and mortar filled with possessions, though held not owned by me. He holds the keys, the title, the land, the door in random company. He holds my name, my wrists, my breasts, the right to claim what once was free. I walk the sands of the shoreline to which no man holds the deed, earth and ocean meeting the heavens, sacred union, both bound and free. She holds the core, the light, the love, the depth and breadth of me. She holds my hope, my hands, my heart, with open palms and bended knee. Thank you.
This is a story called That Minute, Jacksonville, North Carolina, 1965. And I'll just preclude it with 2 things. 1965 was the first year of the Vietnam War, and the thing is, for some of us of my age and older, even a little younger, it's astonishing how much the world has changed in the time that we've been on Earth. And I know for a lot of my students take the world as it is now and don't realize the real sea changes that have happened in our country and in our world. It was as if they had stepped out to a different planet where everything was familiar but somehow off. Like aliens had seen movies or sucked memories out of people's brains and then had turned away and built from their impressions, as if they had paraphrased the town. Ridge wasn't sure why he saw everything that way. It was Sunday, a sunny Sunday. In front of him, a wide tree-lined main street picketed with parking meters, a traffic light swaying overhead, a drugstore, Rexall, a movie theater, the 10 Commandments, a family restaurant, Randy's Roost, people inside perched on stools at the zinc counter or sitting in vinyl cushioned booths, like exhibits of themselves, to his eyes. The women in pastel Sunday dresses, beehive hairdos, and makeup that froze their faces into lacquered masks. the men in white shirts and black jackets or in checkered shirts, jeans or overalls, long, narrow faces held between the parentheses of sideburns. Ridge clicked his vision outside the restaurant again, looking at the scene in increments per training. The phrase, "if you like home cooking, stay the H home," etched on the big street side window of Randy's. 3 steepled churches, 2 Baptist, 1 Methodist. A sign in front, "God is watching." 3 old men on a bench staring at Ridge and his friends like God's spies. The traffic light hanging over the intersection turned green. A rest-red Buick, its rear window painted in swirls of dust, moved forward. A Chevy pickup, Happy Lab setter in the back, pink tongue flecking foam into the breeze. Down the street, what might be a town hall, red brick. He imagined a little square in front, pecan trees, dapple shading the statue of a Confederate general. A prototype of a southern town, Ridge thought. Would that be the word? His friend Robbie, who came from a town in South Carolina that was probably just like this one, thought of Ridge as a New York intellectual because he had some books in his footlocker. Seeing the latter, Robbie, 6'3", 250 pounds, a GED dropout like Ridge, had insisted on a program to improve his vocabulary, help him possess, he said, his new experiences. It was something the other 3 in the fire team had gotten into, styling themselves educated warriors, memorizing 2 new words chosen by Ridge each day: misogynist, anachronism. Ridge's own store of words accumulating as a result: displacement, alienation. But no, he admitted, this was no strange planet. He was just in America, as opposed to being in the Marine Corps. Though he could see the tendrils of the latter now insinuated among the other buildings: a bar, Dunny's Slop Shoot, another, Rosie's, 2 pawn shops. But subtract those and his imagined Confederate general, and this could be Ridge's own hometown. The strangeness in his eyes, he understood, obtained from the disorganized, discombobulated civilianness of it all. Was that a word, Robbie? The town existed because of the base it clung to like a lamprey, but it was on Earth. He and the other 3 with him now were the ones from a different planet, aliens from the planet of the Marines, Camp Geiger Tigers. His own vision had shifted. He saw things symmetrically. What was unsymmetrical put him off. People diddy-bopping down the street out of step, maintaining erratically different intervals, hair of many lengths, clothes of many colors, shoes of many scuffs, arms flying and flailing every which way. Worst, hands thrust into pockets, fingers fingering and scratching, mouths gaping, yawning, smiling, smoking, joking, slumping, chewing, farting, spitting. Dissimilar or dysfunctional physiques. Overalls falling straight down, waist to heels patched over an absence of ass or straining in front to hold a bowling ball of a belly. A woman swinging hips wide as a dumpster, hair piled multi-layered and multicolored atop her head like an ice cream sundae. It had all become strange to his eyes. He was a spectator outside the bubble, he and Robbie and Chris and Anton in their spotless Class A uniforms, 3 knife-sharp creases on the backs of their shirts, 2 in front, rifle badges centered exactly over their chest pockets, shoes spit-shined so fine that tiny suns flared from their tips, piss-cutter caps square on their heads, white wall, or in Anton's case, he supposed black wall haircuts. They were a single creature, fine-tuned, in-step, flat-bellied, wind-burned, taut-muscled. They finished each other's sentences or didn't have to, shared a vocabulary that wasn't in Webster's, and a set of references they had earned and now owned. 12 weeks at Paris Island, DI's spittle still on their faces, fist bruises still on their bellies, curses still ringing in their ears. 4 weeks at Lejeune, working together as a fire team, running 4 miles a day, 20-mile hikes, 60-pound packs, field stripping and cleaning and firing M14 rifles and M60 machine guns and M1 and Browning automatic rifles left over from Korea at cardboard Viet Cong. Throwing grenades, sneaking and peeping through thick woods and muck swamps on nighttime compass navigation, sleeping in holes, jumping the space between 2 second-story windows in full gear, climbing ropes insane, crawling under barbed wire, rounds cracking overhead, shot at and missed, shit at and hit. The 4 of them walking down this chaotic, disorganized street now, automatically in step, arms swinging 6 inches to the front, 3 to the rear. Chris, Anton, Ridge, Robbie, Jersey boy, Marylander, New York, and redneck, all knit into the same body, a life form from another planet. They had each other's backs. They would die for each other, brothers, guardians of these soft, sloppy, mundane civilians. What's the Southern word for English muffin? He asked Robbie. Cow turd, Robbie said. Roger, English muffin, man, Chris said. Get some. He opened the door to Randy's. Ridge thought he saw a flicker of doubt in Robbie's eyes, a hesitation before he walked in, the hum of conversation, the laughter and tossed you-alls dying down to whispers and then silence as they strutted back to an empty booth, where Ridge's ass naturally caught the section of the vinyl cushion patched with duct tape. He and Robbie on one side of the table, Chris and Anton on the other. They each looked at the laminated menus, Randy's slogan on top, Stay to H home. Ridge mouthed the word hell and then said it aloud like a prayer, as if to fill in the blank. But sitting with his friends now, he was glad he hadn't stayed to hell home, saw himself pushing an endless line of shopping carts up an eternal slope right into the sad middle-aged. He looked further down the menu, seeing the exotic, pondered the word grits. Wasn't there a comic book, Sergeant Grit, meaning stubbornly courageous or something, some death spec you got in your eye? A grit. Could a grit be a grunt? Chris and Anton were flipping through selections on the mini jukebox fastened to the wall. Soldier Boy, My Boyfriend's Back, It's in His Kiss, Mickey's Monkey, My Girl, Motown coexisting with Hank Snow and Loretta Lynn. Robbie was looking around nervously, as if assessing a new piece of terrain. It was the first time Ridge realized they were not eating together in a mess hall or opening C's out in the field. The first time they would have to order and pay for a meal since they put on the uniform. The waitress was coming toward them, blonde hair piled up with a curl falling over her forehead, bee-stung, strawberry lips, creamy skin, firm breasts under a red-checked shirt, and when she turned, tight jeans and a tight ass that he rose to like a pointer. What they were fighting for. Serendipitous, Chris said. Aesthetic, Anton said. Robbie looked away, fidgeted, reddened, drummed his fingers against the top of the sugar container, Ridge taking it for an attack of the shies, feeling a wave of affection for the big guy. He noticed that the noise level in the restaurant, which had risen slowly since they came in, had fallen again to whispers, some people nudging each other. He thought he understood, recognized the entertainment value of the scene, the GI and the local girl meeting cute. The waitress came over to their table, nothing up close disappointed. She smiled at them warmly, her teeth perfect. Your teeth, he said to her, are perfect. Chris looked at him with dismay, mouthed, your teeth are perfect? But her smile didn't fade. I'm sorry, y'all, she said, and nodded at Anton. We can't serve him in here. She gestured at a smaller sign under the Stay to H home. A sudden wisdom bloomed on Anton's face, as if he were remembering some vocabulary he should never have forgotten. He nodded at it, grinned tightly, got up. He left the restaurant. The other three stared after him. What do you all have? The waitress asked pleasantly. They sat for a full minute, three white boys staring at the menus in the silence they were now part of. Chris slapped his menu down. The fuck, he asked. He rose. Ridge and Robbie did also. They all knew it was too late. They left the restaurant, trying to follow their friend out into the America in whose name two of them would die during the next year. But he was gone.
My name is Desiree Glass, and my poem is entitled White Flats, and I wrote that in dedication to my youngest daughter who married last month, and it was on the occasion of her wedding. White flats for her wedding day. 1, 2, 3, just 3 weeks away. Mom, should I leave the shoes here? Yes, leave them here. Leave them here. Don't put them on. Leave them here. You're too young. 20 years fly like seconds on the clock. Hello, goodbye, tick-tock, tick-tock. Mind travels back. First thoughts of you. Wondering then, can it be? Is it true? Lord, you know what I'm suspecting. Is it so? Am I expecting? Flat on my back, jelly slathering, belly bulging for an ultra smattering. There's the sight. Here's the news. Time to buy some little girl shoes. Thank you, God, for baby on the way. Prayers for her health and an easy birthday. Belly bigger, baby growing, poking fingers, tapping, towing at my bursting bladder, rapping at my rib cage. Time for little girl to take center stage. I'm ready to go, Mom, ready to get out, ready to see what this world's about. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10. Count them once, count again. This little piggy went to the market. This little piggy stayed home. Flat on my back, her belly on my toes. 1, 2, 3, and up she goes, flying on my feet, fingers interlaced, giggles and squeals in this happy space. God, may my girl always soar with you and follow the plan you've called her to. School bus screeches to a sudden stop, down the steps with a skip and a hop, feet flying fast to my warm embrace with a "Honey, how are you?" and a kiss on the face. No matter where my daughter may roam, may you, Lord, lead her way back home. White sneakers climbing to the top of the build, standing steady on the shoulders of the skilled. 1, 2, 3, bases push higher, and there she goes, my daughter the flyer. Dear God, keep her safe, don't let her fall. Please post your angels to heed her call. Flat on my back, tears stream, praying to God, silent screams. She's too young to become a wife. I can't lose her from my life. This little piggy, please stay home, safe in my arms, safe and warm. I'm ready to go, Mom, ready to get out, ready to see what this world's about. 1, 2, 3, he's waiting for me. 7, 8, 9, this man of mine. Time for me to fly. Please, Mom, don't cry. Time for a little girl to take center aisle. He'll walk with us, Mom, mile by mile. He's heard your prayers, and my prayers too. And when I'm gone, he'll watch over you. Now, have you seen my white flats?
Good evening. My poem is Death of a Carpenter on page 31. So I'm a carpenter, home improvement contractor by trade, and but my passions lie in film, photography, and writing to tell stories. And I guess when there's an imbalance between your vocation and your avocation, sometimes it creates extreme lows in your life. So this was about 12 years ago, during one of those times, that this poem was written. Death of a Carpenter. The ideas from his head flowed like a flood in a stream of crimson-red consciousness, coagulating on the sidewalk in abstract outlines of pools of blood. Each poetic word appearing jumbled like alphabet soup, senseless to the bystanders who heard the thud, with mouths agape as they attended the rooftop pigeon coops. He was the one bird not to be confined, like some tenement building pigeon, caged, unrefined. He tried to soar like Icarus and kept ascending toward the sun, flew as high as the heat would let him, but his dreams were like a loaded gun, pressing constantly to the back of his brain with nowhere to go, but escape they did finally on the busy sidewalk in front of a New York City French-style bistro.
Hi, I'm Dee Sidnor, and just turn the page one over, and my story is on the next page. It's dark and stormy. I sat at Sperry's that Saturday night, sipping on a dark and stormy. Old man Sperry brews the ginger beer for the drink himself and pairs it with some authentic black seal rum. The dark and stormy is how Block Island gets its nickname as the Bermuda of New England, since we've kind of adopted the drink as our own. I inhaled deeply the ginger from the drink, thinking ginger snaps and gingerbread houses from childhood. Sperry's is an old-fashioned looking pub. Reminds me of Cheers, where everybody knows your name. A thick chunk of oak forms the bar. A thick, clear coating covers a swag knotted rope pattern that's carved into the wood, keeping it all smooth on your elbows. Carved navigation flags form a crown molding around its walls, and shelves high on the walls hold sailing ships that somebody, probably Sperry, has put together. Cozy. At the end of the bar that night sat a guitarist, playing for the crowd. He hadn't been in here before. I figured he must be new in town. I heard the strumming of the chords as he played, and I closed my eyes and just listened as I got a buzz on the ginger scent, or maybe it was the rum. No words, just music. The song became familiar, Sister Golden Hair. I remembered it from the band America back when I was in high school. I began to sing along to the strumming 2 tables away from the musician, with my eyes seeing nothing and wistfully daydreaming of cookie cutters. And I just can't live without you. Can't you see it in my eyes? I've been one poor correspondent and I've been too hard to find, but it doesn't mean you ain't been on my mind. I finished singing the song to the guitar dude's strumming, and when he finished, he took a break and sat down next to me. On cue, Charlie, the bartender, showed up. What will it be? Jack and Coke for me. Give the lady another whatever she's drinking. Jack and Coke, dark and stormy. Got it. Dark and stormy? Never heard of it. Just the drink, or is the lady in a dark and stormy mood? Damn it. Dimples and a beard. Never heard of it. I thought everybody had. Both, I guess. You ought to sing with me more often. Sounds a lot better than my picking and strumming. Why don't you sing? Because I sing like a toad. Hard for a toad to hold a guitar, I smile. Yes, ma'am. Where are you from? I haven't seen you in here before. Ma'am, if I'm not mistaken, that sounds like a pickup line. The heat rose from my neck upward, but I was saved by Charlie. Jack and Coke, dark and stormy. You ought to have Stormy sing with you after the break, Charlie said to my new friend, whose name I realized I didn't know. Stormy? Just like the drink, yeah. It's really Stephanie. Yours? Peregrine. Call me Grin. Okay, sounds like we're a pair, Stormy and Grin. A weird pair. There was something about this guy, Grin. What kind of name is that anyway? Maybe I wasn't one to question. He seemed to have the greenest eyes, but they seemed to have a darkness in them. Mine were brown, and his just fascinated me. His eyes were green, like a new leaf of an oak tree in the spring. He had dark, curly hair, looked like he'd been out in the wind and not combed it when he came inside. So you're new in town. Where'd you come from? I don't think you answered that before. What makes you think I'm new in town? Look, Grin, I know everybody here. And you never heard of a dark and stormy. Yeah, you're right, just kidding around. I'm from western Pennsylvania, a little town called Penfield. What brings you to these parts? Just looking to try something new. The wind was blowing eastward that day, so I drove east. Ended up in Newport and landed this gig from some lady who hooked me up with Sperry. Time to get back up there, he said, killing the end of his drink. Join me? Sure, what the hell. Mine was still half full, but I downed it too. What am I singing? No Desperado? Hell, I am Desperado. Yeah, I know it. The sunlight has a way of being just a little too bright some mornings, and I stretched out and rested my arm across my eyes. The warm leg against mine reminded me that I wasn't alone. I rolled over, the glare of the sunrise off the water nearly blinding me. I found him looking at me, smiling. Sky's red, that's a good sign, right? Not in the morning. I rolled my eyes and turned over. He curled up behind me, put a hand on my shoulder. His fingers began to run through my hair, separating my curls so gently. My dad didn't know much about taking care of a girl, and a girl with hair challenges was on her own. Somewhere along the line, a teacher or a hairdresser taught me to embrace my curls and just put plenty of products in them to manage it. It was hard growing up without a mom around, but somehow we made it through, just me and Dad. What does the lady do for a living? Nothing on a Sunday. What about on a Monday? I run the shop my dad started when he was living. Must be doing all right. Any other family around? No, just me by my lonesome. Look, I need to get some things done today. I'm supposed to meet some friends for lunch, and I've got some things to catch up on before the weekend's over. Oh, right, he rolled over away from me, and I felt the cheer of the air as he lifted the covers. Yeah, I've got things I gotta get done today, too. The bed creaked and he rolled out. So I'll see you again sometime? Yeah, sometime. Maybe I'll sing another song with you down at Sperry's next time you're playing your guitar. Yeah, maybe. Look, I'm just gonna let myself out. I climbed out, made my bed, started the coffee pot, and turned on the shower to warm up. The towels of the cabinet toppled over as I pulled the teal one off the top of the stack. I straightened them, closed the cabinet, and hung my towel over the rack by the shower. I pulled back the shower curtain, the sailboat printed in the center, folding up on itself like a shipwreck. Stepping in, the water was warm, and I let it run on me and began to wash my hair. The shampoo smelled like coconuts, and the smell helped to clear my mind. I rinsed my hair, leaning my head back so the water mist sprayed in my eyes as the water does when the boat heels in a stormy wind. My eyes remained closed while I rinsed, and as I opened them, I saw blackness. I turned the faucets off, pulled the curtain open, and felt for my towel on the rack. Another damn power outage. I stepped out of my room, where the daylight let me see to get dressed, out into my room, and put on my underclothes. I pulled on a black t-shirt, one of my stormy sailing promo shirts, and a pair of Levi's, wondering what had caused the power outage. The sun was still shining out there, though some dark clouds seemed to be heading in my direction. I grabbed the phone book in my nightstand and looked inside the front cover for the emergency outage number. If you'd like to report an outage, please press or say 1, and I'm not going to read the Spanish part. I pressed 1. The number you're calling from is that correct? Yes. The system, is that correct? Yes. I've always hated talking to a machine. Thank you for your patience. The outage has been reported. Goodbye. I walked out into the kitchen and saw that the coffee pot had brewed about a cup before the electricity was lost. I grabbed a cup from the cabinet and emptied the pot into my mug. Sipping it, I retrieved my keys and purse from the rack by the back door. My '95 Plymouth was parked in the gravel by the back porch steps. I got it a few years ago with the money Dad left me in his will. I put the key in the door to unlock it, and I got inside. I figured I'd run up to Misty's coffee shop to see if she knew what was going on with the power. I put the key in the ignition, pulled the buckle for my seatbelt across me, and locked it. I released the emergency brake, placed my foot on the brake pedal, and turned the key in the ignition. Nothing. What the hell? I tried it again. Still nothing. What the hell is going on? Nothing's working. Some freaking shift in the universe? I walked back into the kitchen, grabbed the boat key off the rack, let the screen door slam behind me, and stormed down the steps to the porch. The path to the pier is a familiar one. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I saw my kayak first, out in the middle of the river, apparently empty. What? My heart began to pound, and I quickened my pace. This was getting too weird. I passed the shed that sits before the steps that go down to the pier, and when I walked to the bottom of those steps, it was almost no surprise when my dinghy wasn't anywhere to be found. My heart was about to pound out of my chest, and my mind kept racing, trying to think of what I should do next. It's nearly a mile out my gravel drive to get to Miss Fitzwater's house. I decided I'd grab my bicycle or walk. I climbed the stairs, and I thought of Grin. I wondered if he could have done this. Nobody likes rejection. What if he was still here? God, I couldn't even remember if his car was gone. It seemed like I would have noticed. Then I noticed that the shed door wasn't closed. Did I leave it open? Nope. There he was, Grin, and he was grinning. Hi, what are you doing here? You didn't want me to leave so soon, did you? Really, we were just getting to know each other. No, of course not. Good, that's what I thought. Do you know what happened here? What's the matter, missing something? Don't you worry, everything's fine. I just wanted to make sure you stayed around a little while so we could talk. So I don't need to worry. Of course not. Hey, I'm really hungry. You think you could fix me a sandwich or something? He smiled then, knowing I wouldn't say no to him. Okay, I think I have some chicken salad and some bread. Is that okay? Peachy. He followed me inside then, and I complained that I couldn't see very well with the power out. Well, maybe you should be a little nicer to your guests then. I'm sorry, really. I didn't mean to be so rude. Yeah, that's easy to say now. I took the chicken salad out of the fridge and wished had enough foresight to put poison in it or something. I got the bread out of the pantry and began to untwist the tie on the bread bag. Let me get that. I'm going to get a knife. Don't want you to get any crazy ideas. He took a dinner knife out of the drawer and handed it to me. I began to spread the chicken salad on the bread, and I tried to act like nothing was peculiar, when really everything was peculiar, and my brain was spinning with ways I could get myself out. I didn't know what he was capable of. But with all he had done, I knew I had to do something to get away from him. I made this chicken salad myself yesterday. I hope you like it. I carried it to the table, and he followed me and sat down. He picked up the sandwich firmly, holding the bread to keep the chicken inside. I heard what sounded like a car door outside. You expecting somebody? No, really, must be a delivery or something? On a Sunday? I guess not. I really don't know. I heard a knock on the door. Get rid of him. I walked to the door. I saw the truck for the electric company through the window on the way. It's the electric company. Okay, just tell them everything's fine. I opened the door. Hi, how can I help you? We got a call that there was an outage here, but we can only trace it down to the house. Mind if we check the breaker panel? Sometimes the whole house breaker flips for whatever reason. Oh, well, that must be what happened. Let me show you. I slipped my body out the door, pulled it behind me, and walked to the truck, grabbing hold of the front of a worker's jacket on the way, pulling him along with me. Lady? I'll explain. The other worker followed me along, not knowing what was going on, and Grin came to the door. I hoped he was unarmed, since he had not pulled anything on me yet. You need to get in the truck, and we need to get out of here. That man is crazy, and I don't know what he'll do. The tall guy opened the door to the truck, and I got inside. The other worker got in beside me, while the tall guy walked around to the driver's seat. Grin was running out the front door. Honey, now don't be bothering those gentlemen with our problems. He your husband, the tall guy asked me. Nope. It's a long story. He's crazy. Call the cops.
I feel like I'm an imposter because I'm not from Southern Maryland, but I have really deep roots here. So I hope you guys welcome me. My story is called Flood, and it's on page 12. And the smell woke him, same as yesterday, sopping in close like a stagnant pond. He pushed his face into the pillow to block out its thickness. Up close, the cornflower pattern on his sheets blurred and receded, the flowers big and mocking, looking for sunlight that hadn't come for days. Tommy rolled onto his back and picked up the clock radio, slammed 2 AA batteries into the back. Still no news, just the same rotation of country songs swirling through the airwaves like flotsam. None of the local stations came in. They'd gone dark soon after the rain started and the wind sped over the inlet. He gave up, got up, tried the bathroom faucet. It sputtered, spat, gave up too. He knew he had some time. Last phone call he got was his brother, yesterday, to tell him the boats wouldn't make it out to the island until Monday. Just sit tight. But Monday was still 2 days away, and his small stash of food under the bed was nearly gone. 10 years since he and Kelly had taken the house over, and all that time it was never this bad. Storms would build, weather reporters would forecast destruction, and nature would deliver a drizzle. Worst case, it'd be the tree limbs falling onto the roof. He'd call his brothers, and together they'd chop up the wood while their father replaced shingles, perched precariously upon a ladder high above his son's protestations. His brothers would each work faster than the other before they took a few steps back, panting, looking at what they'd done and wondering which limb would be the next to go. Kelly would come out of the house to tease them about how long it was taking to clear her yard, her father-in-law joining in from the ladder with a line about his slow-moving ground crew. But they'd finished the work, and as his brothers left town and his father lost his grit, Tommy kept on by himself, kept the house standing. He tugged a shirt over his head and stared out his bedroom window at everything gray and wet and now so very unfamiliar. The damage was both thorough and random. First floor was a swamp, and the shed washed away along with every tool he owned, but a canoe on top of the woodpile remained unmoved. The house across the narrow road, now sagging under its soaking weight, had barely changed at all until this week, the week his world began to drag down into the Patuxent, toward the Chesapeake, toward the sea. He went to the hall, looked down the stairs at the water lapping at the third step, sloppy and black. Off came his jeans, wrinkled with sleep, and he began descending the steps into the living room. There was no pause before plunging his bare foot into the pool that had collected in his home, proceeding down the steps and onto the first floor. The water ringed his thighs and licked at the bottom of his shorts, warm and briny like the brackish creeks and inlets surrounded the house, now merged together. He kept expecting his feet to sink into a silty bottom, but instead they found only a carpet's tiny fibers worming between his toes. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, and he could barely make out his pale feet among the objects the water had moved as it came into the house. A hardcover book, an ashtray, a picture of his parents. He bent over to pick up these things. Thank God when he saw the glass in the picture had not broken. But the photograph itself was warped, his parents' distorted images of their young selves, now ghosts. He turned, looking at the picture, and beneath the water a pain shot into his shin as he collided with something hard, a wooden chair on its side. He surged, lifted the chair out of the water, and tossed it against the wall, where it let out a pathetic crack before splashing down next to the couch. He cursed, sloshed to the chair, and put it on top of the couch, bobbing slightly like a raft with a desperate passenger. Tommy moved through the living room and into the kitchen, to the wall clock, 9:40 a.m., went to the fridge, which he hadn't touched since before the storm when newscasters warned of power outages. Damn sure it's all spoiled now, so much for keeping it cool, Tommy thought. And he heaved the door open. Water spilled into the fridge instantly, pushing lettuce and plastic containers of leftovers into the kitchen, bumping into Tommy's legs as they drifted past. He snatched a beer from the flowing stream of his food, gave the clock a brief thought, then opened the can anyway, still cold. He grabbed a half-eaten sandwich, left the door open, and pushed his way through the wasted food drifting through the kitchen, and ate hunched over the kitchen counter, exhausted. Only awake 10 minutes, maybe 20, and he already wanted to go back upstairs to bed. The seeing wore him down. Everything he wanted to preserve was lifted, shoved, released, unfastened, disheveled, lost to the water that kept rising, reminding him that nothing, that no one could stay. He finished the sandwich, rinsed his hands in the filthy water lapping at his thighs, went into the downstairs bedroom. He had been using the small room as an office, but after his father died, the room became a storage locker for all that was left behind. A dresser stood between two windows on the south wall, unmoved since the day he and his brother brought it in. The things he had carefully organized and labeled had been skewed and toppled by their own buoyancy. A box of Christmas ornaments had spilled over, and tiny angels and sleighs and shiny balls of nylon swam among old mattresses, the high school yearbooks, and photo albums. Before she got sick, Kelly had wanted to help him go through the stuff, whittle down what he wanted and what he could let go, and he would always joke that the place could burn and he wouldn't miss any of it. Well, maybe he'd grab his mother's rosary, he had said, and she brought the rosary upstairs to the bedroom in case he had to grab it in a panic. But now, the house was filling slowly, and he was waiting, watching his life succumb a quarter inch at a time. He could afford to wade, he could afford to turn over the memories floating past his knees. Without Kelly's help and with nowhere to be, he moved through the stillness to the salvage. He found a dry cardboard box high on a shelf, his father's shirts neatly folded inside. They came out, and in went his father's Zippo, which the old man had kept long after he gave up the cigars. In went a few family pictures for which Tommy had never found a place. In went a small shoebox of postcards and letters Kelly had written him while she was at college in Baltimore. And he stopped for a moment to read her words again, smiled at the plans she imagined for their life together, the dreams he was still trying to live in her honor. In went his high school yearbook. Soon his box was spilling out like the river over its banks, and Tommy heaved it into his arms, steadied against his chest, and made his way toward the stairs. His feet slid across the floor, and he was careful not to take too large a step. And when he reached the bottom of the steps, he leaned against the wall to rest. And as he shifted his weight, the bottom flaps of cardboard gave way, and out slid his life into the water, the best pieces of his tiny curatorial collection splashing down around his legs. He dropped the box, flailed and scooped at the objects, all floating, sinking, spinning around in the murk. Kelly's letters all fluttered out and soaked up in the water, blurred and bled, ink stains spreading the way her cancer had done. His box at once became flimsy and sopping and useless. He held a tiny clutch of treasure, a leather belt, his own high school diploma, A family photo pressed close to the glass with water, like tissue on a microscope slide. Tommy leaned back against the wall, felt the wires and bolts and glue that held him together give way all at once, his limp fingers releasing the little bits they'd managed to grasp from the flood. Whatever spark he had burned out, and he slid down the wall to the floor, let the water ride up his scalp and wash over his exhaustion, wash over his fight against time that he tried to box up and take with him. His head went underwater and he exhaled, eyes open, watched the bubbles rise and burst with such satisfaction, the deep bellow of escaping air shuddering in his ears. The water was cool, soothing, and though the salt and dirt burned his eyes, he kept them open, stared at the wavy world above. His mind found a tiny memory, swimming with Kelly in the inlet, him underwater and sneaking up beneath her, wrapping his arms around her legs and hearing her muffled gasp above the water, the feel of her skin scissor-kicking between his forearms before he released her. He shot up, sucking air in buckets as he shook the water from his head. His arms, cramped and leaden only moments before, found their strength again, and he grabbed hold of the railing. Tommy hoisted himself up the stairs and back to his room. He dressed, found dry clothes, extra socks, a toothbrush, jammed them all into an old duffel bag from some local gym he'd joined long ago. The window screen popped out with a sharp, unrestrained kick, flew through the rain and spun into the slow-moving current below. He stuck his head out the window and looked down at the canoe atop the woodpile, propped up against the house a good 2 feet above the water, 8 feet below his bedroom window, the end of a paddle peeking out beneath the gunwale. The rain kept on, steady and oppressive. He drew back from the window, emptied a trash bag with clothes onto his floor, and tossed the bag over his body, ripped a hole out for his head, looped the duffel bag over his left shoulder. One leg out the window, then his head, then his torso, and he lowered himself down toward the canoe, feet dangling above the logs and hands bleeding as they clung to the metal window frame. The raindrops made tiny plastic pops as they hit the trash bag around his body, and Tommy shook his head to throw the water from his eyes, and he let go. Thanks.
The photo is on page 41. This photo represents my favorite theme, urban candid photography. I roam the streets of New York, whether Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., just hoping to capture an interesting moment. I have quite a few of these, so that's one of my major joys in photography. If you're interested in photography at all, the college has wonderful courses with incredible instruction, both in digital and in film. So that's how I got my start. I've taken all the courses at the college. I wish there were more. So if you have any interest at all, please consider CSM. Thank you.
Hello. My name is George White, and I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to take a trip back to a lighter time, and I hope to take you back there too. My short story is Bikes and Bullets. It's on page 5. It was at a time when boys still wore button-down sweaters, and in a neighborhood where there was no shame in wearing trousers short enough to expose a young man's perfectly white socks, trousers worn in a fashion that kept them from getting tangled up in a bicycle sprocket. There was something about that particular morning, made crisp by an October chill, that was completely exhilarating. The sun, patient through the night, was just now able to escape the darkness and began to glance back at me over the horizon. The house was quiet except for the clanking of breakfast dishes being loaded by my mother into the drainer. I made my way down the narrow hallway that led to the rear of the house, pushed through the screen door that creaked in recognition of its cheers. An adventure is in the making, I can feel it. This is a solo journey and the first of its kind. I launch it from the deck of my back porch, whereupon, rescuing a third-hand bicycle from certain death, I set out, unauthorized, for places unknown.
Climbing high atop its rusty, child-sized frame, my hope is the bicycle and this growing feeling of freedom might last, perhaps forever. Riding east, negotiating the winding asphalt trail, I slip over the crest of a short hill as small flecks of sunlight flash like sparks through my tiny openings in the trees. Acorns pop beneath the cold rubber tires. Gunfire, I think. Brisk air sends late October leaves skittering across the winding path. A dozen more acorns pop and skip from beneath the tires. Pop, 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 pop. Must be machine guns, I think. Giving a nod to my intuition, I bend down low to reduce drag and to avoid incoming rounds. Speed is essential. Ahead, a long, darkly shaded tunnel falls below a highway bridge. Ah, safety. But what if the enemy is waiting in ambush on the bridge above? How would I know? I reason. Need to pedal faster, dropping swiftly down the hill, passing beneath the bridge, gaining speed as I go. I shout in defiance at the unseen enemy, and an echo is returned. Hey, 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 hey. Hastening my way through the tunnel, I glimpse a trusted light on the other side as it reveals the ascending hill. Need to maintain speed, I worry. Press down hard on the pedals while pulling up fiercely on the handlebars, the bicycle begins a rhythmic creaking in response to the strain. Then the inevitable. Pow! Shotgun, I deduce. But no, it's the chain. As it flies apart, my already unsteady bike goes crashing into the earth, throwing me and my adventure tumbling into a pile of rocks and dust. Medic, I think. Mom, I whimper.
I was thinking about how do people get past transgressions? I was thinking about things like, you ate the last peanut butter in the refrigerator and somebody's mad at you and you have to get over it. And how do you apologize? And sometimes, we give excuses for why we did it, and so it wasn't really my fault. And as I was thinking about this kind of a relationship, I also was thinking about, on MASH one time, Radar was mad at Hawkeye. And when they were talking about how you get over it, and Hawkeye said, well, one day we'll be in the mess together, and you'll get a great knee high, and we'll talk about it. And so that idea was really interesting to me as I thought of this idea about forgiving him. Then I was reading something. I'm interested in Sufism lately. And there was a Sufi master who said that God loves us so much that for every one step we take towards him, he comes running across all the expanse of the universe to meet us because he wants to be with us. And so that and some other things, and somewhere I was looking at the Old Testament, and I got caught up in the greatest transgression of all time when old Adam ate that apple. And so this is an idea that comes from this thought about how do we deal with this issue of forgiveness? How do we talk about it? And then it also has this idea in it that God loves humans so much that he wants us to be with him. And so the poem is called In the Times After. They did not speak of the time before, a private thing between them. They both knew it happened and could not be changed. So they walked together, talked about this year's crop, how the wheat kernels were particularly heavy, how the weather was especially mild. They noted what a scamp that Cain was, how he was jealous of Abel, the quieter, more thoughtful child. I fear he will become a wanderer on the earth, he once said without humor. He suppressed a smile when his creation said, I think the sun must move through the sky in a great circle. As it rises in the east, travels to the west, yet comes up from the east at the next day's dawning. Day by day, side by side, they walked and talked about anything except what they both knew, what had become their unspoken past. What exquisite love existed between them that they could rejoice in the unfolding elegy of creation? What inchoate wonder allowed him to look upon splendor, lamenting what was lost, yet still able to walk in its presence? What awful, unforgetting mind could come racing across time and toward that ephemeral dust for every 2 tottering steps it took towards him?
The turquoise shirt. The mist was almost oppressive, spiraling around the dark trees like silver paint suspended in water. I shivered. It was damp, and I was dressed for summer in gray shorts and a bright turquoise t-shirt. With this realization came a flash of memory, an image. These same woods, but the trees were covered with green leaves, and the sunlight was making spotlights on the ground. It should be July. I had no right to be scared. Why should I be scared? After all, there was nothing there but mist, no animals of any kind in sight. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something lurking among the twisted black roots of the trees. Perhaps it was the uneasy feeling that a forest should always have living things in it, bugs crawling around or crows cawing. However, this place had neither, and the silence was even more frightening than any roar of beast. Why was I here? Why was I wearing summer clothes when it looked and felt like November? And most importantly, who was I? The feeling that something horrible was coming pressed down on my chest when a branch behind me cracked. It's okay, I thought as I jumped in surprise. It's probably just a rabbit or something. However, I started walking at a brisk pace in the opposite direction from whatever it was. I got the feeling this was no ordinary place, and it had been suspiciously deserted of all life and sound up to now. I would expect any rabbit around here to be a rabid killer rabbit with needle-like teeth. I walked quickly through the twisted, gnarled trees, feeling as if one of them would fall on me any second. The spine-chilling silence did nothing to make me feel better. Tree roots sprawled everywhere, and I couldn't see very well enough to avoid stumbling on them, what with the viscous gray fog. Suddenly, I heard another snap behind me, this one louder. This time, I could actually sense that there was something behind me, something big and dangerous, and it was coming specifically for me. I started running then, desperate to get out of that hideous forest, though I didn't really know if there was a place that wasn't misty woods. I ran anywhere, tripping over nearly every root, and then picking myself up so quickly that it was as if I had not fallen at all. It was almost as if I flew over the roots, my hands not stopping me, but vaulting my still running feet over them. My hands and knees were soon scraped all over and bleeding. The red of the blood was a stark blur against all the gray and black in the blue of my shirt. I could hear it behind me. It had stopped discreetly stalking me and was now running, breaking twigs and branches all around. They sounded brittle as glass. I turned my head briefly to try and see it, but I saw nothing but trees and vapor. It was harder to run now, my breaths coming in gasps and pants, the branches trying to obstruct my path, whipping my face and torso, though they seemed to break easily for the thing behind me. I had no sense of time. I could have been running for hours and not noticed. The thing behind me did not tire, but it didn't catch up with me either. After a time, I realized that it was playing with me, trying to wear me out for its own enjoyment. I kept on running in the wild hope that I would suddenly find myself at my home, but where that home was, I had no idea. I didn't even have time to wonder anymore, as all my energy was focused on just putting one foot in front of the other, even as my legs ached and my hands stained the turquoise of my shirt a motley purple color when I tried to wipe the blood off them. The shirt was getting the worst of it, all ripped and blood-stained because of the branches and falls. The crashing and thumping behind me grew louder and closer. It was closing in on me, apparently tired of its game. Just as I felt my legs would give out, I pushed back a branch, and a gray road was suddenly in front of me. No banks or ditches or telephone poles near it, but a road nonetheless. I had stumbled onto it before I had even noticed its existence, and was now looking back at the terrible misty forest, fearing the creature, but somehow knowing that I was safe on the road. The crashing stopped as I saw a pair of shining red eyes staring into mine. The fog fanned out from the monster, as if a drop of clear water had fallen in the paint, diluting it. It was not a rabbit. The gruesome creature in front of me was a deer, but this deer was no cute forest animal. This deer was the most horrifying thing I had ever seen. Its eyes glowed red, and its antlers were white and sharpened. That wasn't the worst of it, though. The left side of the deer was nearly ripped off, and its entrails were gaping out of its stomach, one of the intestines drawing a bloody line on the ground. I could hardly believe it was even alive, much less able to run after me. The deer glared at me, but didn't move forward. I stared back at it, incredibly relieved that my intuition, if it was my intuition, was correct in thinking that I was safe on the road. I realized that I must have looked almost as horrifying as the deer, with my body scraped and my blue shirt torn, both bloody. After a few tense minutes, or it could have been longer, as the mist seemed to make time stretch out, the deer turned and walked alongside the road, never on it. Out of curiosity, I followed. I didn't want to lose sight of it, and it seemed to be telling me something. After taking a few steps, I nearly walked into a car, which the mist had previously hidden from me. It was red and rusty, and had a crushed hood and completely obliterated windshield. Blood spattered its entire front, as if it had crashed into some sort of animal. A dark form was slumped over the steering wheel. I quickly ran to the side as the deer watched me impassively. "Are you okay in there?" I yelled futilely. Peering through the window, I could see the driver clearly. My heart stopped, and I could feel the deer's eyes boring into the back of my head. The driver wore a turquoise blue shirt. Thank you.
Probably a good reminder to drive safely on your way back to on Mitchell Road. All right, listen, thank you all very, very much. Can we have one more round of applause for all the readers tonight? They did a great job.